All right. Well, it was a valiant game. Anthony Edwards was just quite simply better than everybody on the court today, particularly in the second half. Um, but that's okay because we were bound to have an experience like this regardless. So I don't exactly hate where we were. Still overall a solid game, but now we're gonna go on our road trip. We see OKC, then we see the Mavericks second, which isn't. I just saw a post that said that Anthony Edwards dunk is a federal crime in 9 states. Might as well be because you know. I love this for us, guys. I love this for us. What did you say, yo? What's good, my guy? You said watch that game with soul shattering with Collins going out for concussion protocol and Keontae getting ran into twice and rushing to the tunnel for a moment. Yeah, it got a little bit scary a couple times. Jazz was again and taking continues. You will be correct, car wash, but this was actually a significantly better watch, especially with Lowry coming back after 6 games. With that being said, um, they had more of a committee effort this time. Obviously, after Mike Conley gave us 27 last game, still had a really good box score plus minus. As a matter of fact, he was plus 15. Anthony Edwards is actually surprisingly -1. But Mike Conley was 2 for 8 today, so he just burned out all his skill points against us the last game. He was 0 of 5 from 3. Anthony Edwards was 13 of 23, 2 of 8 from 3, and 4 for 4 from the free throw line. He also had 7 assists. Excuse me. He has 7 rebounds and 8 assists to go along with his 32 points. Nas Reed was 7 of 12 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, 1 of 2 from the free throw line, had 4 boards, 17 points, box score plus minus of a +3. You saw Kyle Anderson pour in 10.6 boards, 5 assists, and then Jaden McDaniels pour in 9 points, 8 rebounds, and 1 assist. And tied for team high with 2 blocks. Anthony Edwards had 2, and Luca Garza off the bench had 2. Off the bench, there wasn't anything particularly spectacular. You did see Nikhil Alexander-Walker go 4 of 11 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, hit both of his free throws, had 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. Yeah, definitely. Luca definitely had 2 turnovers, not 2 blocks. I misread that. 13 points total, 26 box score plus minus, which was the highest for anybody in the game in his 34.5 minutes. Really, they got a lot of committee work. You saw Jordan McLaughlin play 21, almost 22 minutes, go 3 of 3 from the floor. All 3 of those were, in fact, 3-point attempts. And then he also was 2 of 2 from the free throw line for a total of 11 points, 1 board, and 1 steal. Box score plus minus +5. No Rudy Gobert. Excuse me, no Rudy Gobert. No Leonard Miller. No Josh Minot. No Wendell Moore. No Karl Anthony Towns. Things for us were a little bit rocky at points, but we also had our little positive spots here and there. We said also ESPN disrespectful on their concern with Collins about answers. Of course they were. It was a highlight reel thing. They're gonna play to the crowd, they're gonna play to the highlights. They're going to ignore the actual, ramifications of the health negative effects of what could potentially have transpired until the worst is actually realized. And a lot of people like to ignore it until the last minute. So what else do we expect? Lowry was decent, but too many turnovers. How many did he have? Oh, wow. I wish I didn't look at that number, but yeah. You would be correct. Um yeah, you would be correct. A very good observation, Pete. As a matter of fact, Lowry had 6, Keontae had 6, Sexton had 4, and Walker Kessler had 1, totaling 17, which was all 17 that the team had. Great stuff. It's good, Joey. Tough game, absolutely, but it was an essential negative or the expected negative, however you want to look at it. It was bound to occur, I suppose. Nito, you said you got some issues with this team. What's good, my guy? Why does Will Hardy have Sexton coming off of the bench? Also, was he not the hot man? Why did he get one shot attempt in the fourth? Too many times his teammates completely ignore him and he gets hot when he gets hot. Yeah, you would be correct in that. And he also shot the most efficient from the field today, particularly from 3-point range. 5 of 8 today. Can't really argue with that. Actually, I'm gonna pull up his efficiency in a whole different tab because I want to look at that. I mean, by and large, it seems like they're trying to generate a scoring punch off of the bench. I'm understanding from that particular lineup, considering the fact that obviously if you have Chris Dunn coming off the bench, which was the case before, you don't have a scoring punch because you don't have Jordan Clarkson playing, right? And Jordan Clarkson has been largely inefficient the majority of the season. So without him in the game, it becomes even worse because you have Chris Dunn, you have THT, you have Bryce Sensabaugh, you have Walker Kessler. And none of them are known for being like that 6-man, get you a bucket on a consistent basis kind of guys. So I guess the idea was run Sexton as your intermediary piece and give him the opportunity to just, go after and chase baskets. But he was still solid defensively. He wasn't an immediate liability at all points in the game. There were some ugly spurts, but overall 9 of 17, 52.3%, 52.9% from the field, 5 of 8 from 3, 62.5%. Hit the one free throw that he had 1 rebound, 2 assists. The only thing was he did have 4 turnovers, but the assists were down because of the role that they just put him in coming off of the bench in the way that he did, which was to be expected. He did have a total of 24 points, but surprisingly, he had a negative box score plus minus of a negative 10. But it makes sense when you consider the fact that he shared the court 7 minutes with Kyrie Lewis Jr., who was a box score plus minus of a negative 10 despite having no major statistical stats. Walker Kessler had the worst box score plus minus at a negative 14 in his 28 minutes. 2 of 3 from the field, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. Had 14 boards, 5 of them being offensive. He had 2 assists, 1 block, and 1 turnover. Not great, but there. Bryce Sensabaugh returned to the bench for the first time because, obviously Larry Markkinen is back and inhabiting that small forward spot. You had Bryce go 1 for 5 from the field, 1 of 3 from the 3-point range. He had 1 rebound, 3 assists, no turnovers though. Still not a great night for him. But by comparison to the standards that we've seen most recently, THT saw the court more than I felt he should have. He was, of course, 2 of 7 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3, 2 of 3 from the free throw line, and he had 1 rebound, 3 assists, and 2 steals, though. And his box score plus minus was a surprising only negative 2. So maybe I am rather harsh on him despite his absolutely egregious shooting splits in the games that he's played recently. We went over Sexton. Our starting 5 was Keontae, Chris, John Collins, Taylor Hendricks, and then Lowry in his return. Nobody was terrible per se, but there were a lot of glaring issues. Taylor Hendricks had a good shooting night today. 3 of 6, 2 of 4 from 3. I can live with that. I'm not mad at that. Cool. Had 6 boards to go along with it. 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block. Right? 8 points, box score plus minus of a +1. You saw John Collins in his almost 20 minutes of action. 5 of 9 from the field. He was 1 of 2 from the free throw line. He had 6 boards. That marked it for him. He had 11 total points, box score plus minus of a +4. Chris Dunn in 26.5 minutes, 3 of 9 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3, 3 offensive rebounds, which were his entire rebounds. He had 5 assists, which was second on the team behind Keontae. No turnovers or anything, 8 points, box score plus minus of a +2. Then you had Keontae and Lowry. Now, Keontae, the rookie sensation, had a good shooting night tonight. So he returned to his greatness. 6 of 12 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. He was 1 of 1 from the free throw line. He had 3 rebounds. He had 8 assists. He had 1 steal. The only issue was the 6 turnovers, right? 6 turnovers, no matter how you slice it and dice it, that's bad. Imagine if we transition that into shot attempts, right? Instead of 6 of 12, he was 6 of 18. Does that sound good? No, it doesn't sound good. But growing pains. It's not very often that he has a turnover game above like 3. So I'm willing to chalk this up as an anomaly. Again, he was playing the number 1 defense in the league for the second time on his weekend. he also experienced that hand issue during the game. So a myriad of different things that could have been affecting his game today, but it happened. His block score plus minus was -5. You saw Lowry and his by the way, Keontae played basically 30 minutes. You saw Lowry on not necessarily a minutes restriction per se, but playing a little bit less than he normally does. Playing just over 30 minutes, almost 31. But he was 8 of 16 from the field. He was 1 of 5 from 3 though. So overall, from 2-point range, he was 7 of 11, which was did bode well. He was 5 of 5 from the free throw line, of course. He had 12 rebounds, 3 of them being offensive. He had 1 assist, 2 steals, 1 block. These 6 turnovers was the only bad thing that he had. 22 points, box score plus minus of a -7. So all in all, not a great turnout, but not a bad game. We only gave up 114. We still managed to put up 104, so we passed the century mark. And for the most part, the game didn't really fall apart until the fourth quarter specifically. Third quarter, things got a little bit dicey. We fought back and we were able to end the third quarter, having only been outscored by 6 to keep the game tied. But that fourth was, considering the fact that they outscored us by 10. Really, I call it 7 because that last shot was some BS and it really should never have been shot. But, you know, to the victor go the spoils, and we can't complain about that because we got beat on. You know what I'm saying? Now, to the comments, we said they have issues, big issues. Yeah. Kyra Lewis. Yeah. Kyra Lewis was just kind of vibing out there. Almost 7 minutes of middling, meaningless action. Like when I say he has no major statistical numbers, he has no field goal attempts. He has no 3-pointers. He has no free throw attempts. He has no offensive or defensive rebounds, meaning he has no rebounds at all. He has no assists. He has no steals. He has no blocks. He has no turnovers. He has no personal fouls. And because he did not attempt any shots at all or free throws, he has no points. He just has a fat old -10 box score plus minus. Yeah. Yeah. I think Hardy and the Jazz organization are playing a terrible game in how they're handling Collin Sexton and Walker Kessler. You don't bench your most consistent player. Again, I think that the Sexton thing is less about him playing poorly and more so them needing a scoring punch off of the bench. When you think of the starters, you have, yes, Larry Markkinen. In his return game, you expect him to give you 20 at least, right? You don't expect him to give you 14. You expect him to give you 20 plus, right? If he hits even 2 more of his threes, we're looking at him scoring 25 or 28 points, right? But he didn't. He still had 22 on solid efficiency. Your understanding more so what Taylor Hendricks is going to be for you. You're understanding that who John Collins is for you, and the expectation is that he was going to play more than 20 minutes originally. Obviously, that didn't end up happening because of concussion protocol and things of that nature. But usually, John Collins is a cool 14 to 18-ish points, right? Chris Dunn is obviously not going to give you 20. He's not going to give you 15. He probably won't give you 10 more often than not. He's more so the 5 to 9-ish point scorer kind of guy whose job is more so to table set for other guys, help guys along the way, and just set a defensive tone for you. Then you have Keontae George, who is learning to levy his offensive upside. He's getting better on defense. So he's not as egregious. He's still probably a net negative in my eyes. I would have to look at some more advanced metrics to know for certain. But I understand if you are the Jazz, the Jazz coaching staff, and you say, okay, we have Lowry returning, and now we have Keontae George still being a consistent scorer. If we together can give us, borderline 40 out of the two of those, John Collins, Chris Dunn, and Taylor Hendricks can give us, 20 points between the three of them at least, right? So that puts us at 60. And then we're looking at the bench to give us 40-ish. And it's like, okay, if we have Collin Sexton in that bench unit, then it makes sense because Collin's going to be good for 20 as long as you give him the opportunity to get those shots up. Now, in the fourth quarter, I would have loved to see him get more shots. You are absolutely correct about that, Incognito. At the same time, I'm not going to lie, Collin Sexton looked dog tired at the end of this game. Like the last time out that ended up getting called, I saw him drinking water on the sideline. He didn't look like himself. Now that he played a great game, right? All the numbers, aside from the fact that he had 4 turnovers, lead me to believe that he was getting after it the entire time without exception. But That's not the usual Collin Sexton I guess I'm used to seeing from a demeanor standpoint. And honestly, I don't love him coming off the bench. As biased as I can be for the guy, I don't love him coming off the bench, but I do understand if you don't have Jordan Clarkson and you're not going to expect Kyrie Lewis Jr. to give you 15. You're not expecting Walker Kessler to give you 15. You don't know if you can expect Bryce to give you 15. It didn't work today. He was 1 of 5 from the field. THT is definitely not going to give you 15, especially not on good efficiency. So that leaves you with Lucas Solmanich, or you know, and moving Chris Dunn into starting lineup helps your immediate defense for that lineup naturally. And then it allows you to move Collin Sexton down to the bench to allow him to be that extra scoring punch to kind of middle the road and weather the storm when you have to take out guys like Keontae George or Chris Dunn, or if for the time that Larry Markkinen wasn't on the court for those 17 minutes. We said but I will say this. I will agree with you on the Walker Kessler thing. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Um I don't know. I genuinely don't know. No articles, no advanced metrics are helping me understand what's going on there. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait till the off season, and then we get some random interview out of nowhere on a random Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m. where they say something. Um, I don't love it. It doesn't make sense. I know we're just, fans of the game. We're students of the game. We enjoy watching the game. We like good basketball. So they're not going to sit there and tell us everything because everybody doesn't have that same level of maturity and just ball knowledge to where they can accept something for what it is, hear somebody's truth, and whether we like it or not, just accept it and say, okay, so this is the conditions we're operating under. Let's just roll with it. Most people can't do that. So in that sense, I can understand the reason why they haven't exactly explained it yet. Maybe they'll explain it this offseason. I hope they do. Because honestly, it kind of hurts my brain a little bit. Sometimes we're seeing this guy play 22 minutes. Sometimes we're playing this guy saying 25. Today he played 28. The last start he had, I think he had 30 minutes, which was like one of the highest he's played all season. I can't imagine he's eclipsed 30 minutes of game action and all of probably like 6 contests all year. So I'm not really sure what the goal of this is. I don't know. It just doesn't look attractive to me. And I think that's the most concerning part for me personally. But I'm with you there. Where were we? Where were we? Where were we? He could have started him though. Ran on with the second unit. Hardy's issues. He wants to play his. He wants to overplay his bench instead of playing the starters longer. How do I see? I would say today probably didn't give him much of a choice considering the way that John Collins went down. Larry Markkinen, I did hear that they weren't going to burn him as much as they usually did. So admittedly, it was only like what 5-ish, 6-ish minutes. He only plays like 34, 36 minutes a night. Um, Chris Dunn never is allowed to play beyond, Lord forbid he plays 20, 28 minutes. What did we do? We just killed him, right? Because he's like old as dirt, apparently, or something. I don't know. Chris Dunn never plays a significant amount of minutes. Keontae George actually played a little less than usual, but obviously, the hand thing probably got in the way with it. So I think today our lineups were contingent a lot more on injuries or bruises and bumps and things than anything else. Because there's not that many this is like objectively the first game John Collins has ever started and played under 20 minutes. I don't think it's happened at all this season. I think the least he played in a start was probably 24-ish minutes, if memory serves me right. And I think that happened twice. So an anomaly all around. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. THT start chucking in the fourth right after the Sexton run. Yeah, THT has a really no purpose at this point. I was a THT defender for a period of time, but that period has walked me past. It's behind me now, and I understand that we didn't trade him at the trade deadline. There was no market for him in the offseason. He's going to be a free agent. We don't need to re-sign him. I'm good. It's unnecessary. I'm good. The contract expired. Let another team enjoy his skill set, right? Because it's not working here, right? We've seen it enough to know it's not going to work. Anybody that wants to tell me THT can survive, not just survive, but thrive in Utah, what are we talking about, right? We're talking about a guy who, let me pull these numbers up real quick to give us a little bit of a little taste test. His overall box score plus minus for the reference is a negative 1.9, which is the second worst of his career. But he's played in 43 games this season, averaging about 19 and a half minutes per game, which is roughly in line with all but one season of his career, where it was his third season with the Lakers where he averaged 25 and a half. But he averages 9.8 points, shooting 39.5% from the field, which is a career low field goal percentage, by the way. Shoots 33% from three, so respectable, on 3.4 attempts. It's his best percentages career-wise. 80% from the free throw line on 2 attempts, roughly in line with everything else. 2.4 rebounds, down. 3.7 assists. In Utah, he's averaged his most. With the Lakers, he had 1 assist, 2.8 assists, 2.7 assists. Then with Utah, it went 3.8, 3.7. So responsible. His turnovers are down. Last season he was 1.9. This season he's down to 1.3. 0.9 steals, 0.4 blocks, 1.4 personals. .39.5% from field is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. Not over 20 minutes, it's not. And he's not a bad defender. He's grasped the defensive system. The issue is he can't score worth a lick. For reference, let me see if I can find some of his more recent games. Pull up his just general profile. So 2 of 7 this game. 1 of 6 last game. 2 of 7 the game before, 1 of 3 the game before that, 2 of 8 the game before that. I'm no mathematician, excuse me, but thought I was gonna sneeze. It went away. But if I add up 28.6% from the field, 16.7% from the field, 28.6% from the field, 33% from the field, and 25% from the field, that's nowhere near, the 43 to 45-ish league average percentage. For that reason, his minutes are a wash, playing 24 minutes, then 9 minutes, then 17, then 19, then 19. It's pointless. There's no objective benefit to him doing that. Right? Especially when you finally got to a point where you felt comfortable and responsible enough to play Collin Sexton a respectable chunk of minutes as a starter before moving him back to the bench, as you should not have. But, what do I know? I'm just a guy that sits in a chair talking about basketball, right? For reference, Collin Sexton in 68 games, one of the most available individuals on this roster. As a matter of fact, he has played in every game this year. Just for note, averages 25.8 minutes per game, 18.4 points, shooting 48.8% from the field, shooting 40.9% from three, shooting 86.3% from the free throw line. To go along with 2.6 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 2 turnovers, which is almost his career low. Last season was the only year where he was lower, and he only played 48 games last season at 1.8. Previous to that, in Cleveland, you saw him averaging 2.8, 2.8, 2.4, 2.3. So 2, significantly better. This game obviously hurts that average, but, overall, solid thing. Then you have his usual 0.8 steals, 0.2 blocks, down in personal fouls down to 2. Career high 4 double-doubles this season. Box score plus minus of which is actually his best net number of his career. In Cleveland, it was 8.2 the first year, then 6.1, then 6.3, then 2.7. With us last year was negative 0.6, and this season it's surprising negative 0.4. So when you compare those numbers, right, the THTs in 20 minutes, right? Because mind you, Sexton across 68 games has played 25 and a half, almost 26. And I'm not going to sit here and compare. That's not exactly a genuine apples to apples comparison. We can't do that because THT doesn't exactly have the exact same niche role as Collin Sexton, and his skill set isn't the same as Collin Sexton. So it's disingenuous to do that. But at the same time, percentages are percentages, and you can't sit here and convince me that some guy deserves to play even half as much time as Collin Sexton when you shoot 10% lower from the field and 7% lower from 3-point range, right? I'll give all the minutes to Bryce and put Bryce at point guard before I do that. Me personally, right? Especially understanding that THT is probably not going to get re-signed. If we re-sign THT, I'm going to be scratching my head because for what reason? That doesn't benefit us at all to do that. But we have a lot of questionable decisions that we've made in the past. But where were we? We said THT pushes my buttons. You'd be correct. The Edwards dunk was a dunk of the decade. It's not the greatest dunk in modern NBA history. Gavin, you irritate me, but you're right. That dunk was absolutely nasty. I shuddered in my chair when I actually watched it. You said McDaniel was put on Keontae. He's not used to playing that length. Yeah. And he still did pretty good from a shooting standpoint, regardless of his matchups. And that's why I say this was a good group. These past two games have been a really good measuring stick for the rookies in particular, because they're playing against guys that they're not going to see on a nightly basis. Most guys won't take defense as personal as Minnesota does. Most guys won't be as disciplined on defense as Minnesota is. But they play Minnesota twice in 3 days. Big growth to me. We said, I don't see any PG skills from George. I'm sorry. He wants to shoot. I don't see PG. Team turns runs. I'm assuming that's runs instead of T, runs. Yeah, runs better with Sexton at point. Develop George as a shooting guard. To me, personally, I immediately see George as more of a shooting guard. I think that's partially because the majority of his time when he was at Baylor, he did run the three. He was roughly around 227, 230 pounds. So I think the adjustment period for him is a little bit longer. Now, obviously, yes, he had 8 assists today. Yes, he had 6 turnovers. So the point guard savvy floor generalness doesn't come as easily to him. And so I see a lot of situations he's in off-ball guard situations, and that's kind of what they're bringing him up in, which, credit to them, I think is going to be long-term the best idea for him, because if you can use him as an off guard to begin with, it's going to, how do I put this? If you put him into the position where he's more so going to be the off-ball guard, he's given the opportunity for other guys to set him up and tell him what the play dictates. You're going to allow him to find ways to make himself available. And you see a lot of ball-dominant guards in today's league where they struggle to create off-ball and to play alongside other ball-dominant guards because they have no off-ball game. For example, I know this is hyperbole, but think of Kevin Durant going to Golden State, right? We saw Kevin Durant obviously be an extremely ball-dominant kind of guy, but playing in the Warriors system, that wasn't going to work. So he had to change the way that he did things to cater it to that. And so he became much more proficient as an off-ball player, and it helped elevate his game. And in my opinion, it has lengthened out his career a bit and allows us to respect him as a skilled scorer even beyond what he already was, right? Not to sit there and say that's not an exact apples to apples comparison, but by that logic, I would much prefer that Keontae learns how to be that off-ball guard, that 2-guard situation, alongside somebody that's a table setter like your Chris Dunn's, your Collin Sexton's, and then we force the playmaking on him slowly but surely, because he's going to make mistakes regardless. He's not ready, right? And long term, it's just going to take a little bit longer for him to cook. He's like that roll of cheese in the Cheez-It commercials. Not done yet, not ready yet, but he will get there. I, as a Collin Sexton fan, understand that ultimately what could potentially happen is they draft a wing that they really like. The wing ends up being very proficient at what they need to do. They make Collin Sexton the sixth man of the team, or potentially trade him because they're more invested in the prospects that Keontae George brings. And because Keontae George is finally turning that corner later on in the season, going into the next year, you're going to see him hopefully be more consistent, hopefully be a